Okay, thank you, Matthew, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. For those of you who don't know me, maybe a few people here who don't know me, my name is David Kelber, and I am the Director of Operations for Dean Morgan. And in my job, I give a lot of presentations. Probably every week, 2 or 3 times a week, I have to make a presentation to someone in the company, to somebody outside of the company, once a month or so, to a group of students and new faces sometimes. So today, we're going to be talking about introductions, presentation introductions. And I'd like to start off here with a bit of a quote. And Matthew, can you read that quote for me, please?
Do that which you fear most, and the death of fear is certain.
Yes, it's a very powerful quote. Do that which you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain. It was said by a man named Mark Twain. Has anyone heard the name Mark Twain? Well, I see some hands going up. What did Mark Twain do? He was an author, yes. He was an American author. And when he was writing, many of the things that he did, people did not like. He wrote about very, we say, controversial subjects. At the time, many people got very angry. Mark Twain often had to fear what he wrote about. And he says, do that which you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain. So what does this mean when we say, if you do what you fear, the death of fear is certain? For many people, standing in front of a room is a fear. Maybe in this room, 1 or 2 or 10 people have a bit of a fear of standing in front of people. And it's very common. I want to show you some interesting statistics here. These are people's biggest fears. A number of years ago, they did a study with about 3,000 participants. And they asked, what are some things you are afraid of? And they listed a number of things they're afraid of. Dogs. 10% of people are afraid of dogs. So if you have a dog and you show it to somebody, 1 out of 10 people would say, even if it's a cute dog. Loneliness, flying, heights. But the number 1 fear was speaking before a group of people. 40%, over 40% of people have a fear of speaking in front of others. This one down here, can anybody read what that says? It's death. More people are afraid of speaking in front of a room of people than death. I don't know how that happens or why that happens, but people are very, very afraid of speaking in front of others, public speaking. So today we're going to be talking about presentations, and a big part of presentations is public speaking, being comfortable in front of a room of people. And for me, personally, years ago, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, I did not like standing in front of rooms of people talking. In Japan, many people believe Americans naturally, you're laughing, many people believe Americans naturally like talking in front of groups of people. And the truth is, Americans have the same level of fear of public speaking as Japanese. Actually, Americans have a little bit higher of a percentage of fear. I think in Japan, if you don't want to talk, many times you can kind of hide and you don't have to talk. In America, we're pushed in front of the room, so we learn. But for me, I used to really have a fear of public speaking. And over time, it changed. And we'll look at some of the reasons why it changed for me. And hopefully for everyone in this room, you'll be able to see some of the advantages for presentations and giving speeches and really standing in front of rooms of people and trying to get people organized around your presentation and your thinking. Okay? So what we'll do here is take a look at our outline. And all presentations should have an outline. Now, sometimes you put an outline in front of the people, like I've done. Sometimes the outline is kind of in your head and you follow the path. but all presentations should have an outline. Outlines are very important. One of the reasons why outlines are so important is it helps you remember what comes next. So first we're going to talk about some of our objectives. Every presentation has objectives. If you do not have objectives, you are wasting people's time. Don't waste people's time. Always have objectives for your presentations. We'll look at some presentation basics. And when we say basics, these are very general concepts that happen in every presentation. Very important things to always remember, the presentation basics. The next one here is an interesting one. Anatomy, presentation anatomy. That's a word maybe many people in this room don't know, anatomy. We'll look at anatomy a little bit later, and after this presentation, you will remember the word anatomy. Also, we're going to talk about presentation sand traps. What's a sand trap? You golf, the ball lands in the sand trap, what happens? Does anybody here golf? 3. Okay, yes. Sand traps are where the ball goes in there and you start whacking away again and again and again to get out of it. So sand traps are very bad places to go for presentations. And finally, we'll look at some techniques. Today's presentation is specifically on introductions. So we're going to look at some techniques for introductions. This is a 3-part series on presentations. Today is introductions. We will also be doing international structure of presentations in the following seminar. And later we will do a question and answer presentation on how to handle questions and answers. But today we're starting with the beginning, with the introductions. So first we're going to look at our objectives today. Our first objective is to improve participant awareness of core presentation skills. What does that mean, core? Center, yes. So presentations, when we say core skills, core things, these are things that all presentations should have. With presentations, there are many kinds of presentations. 50 or 100 different types of presentations you can make. But core things go through all of the presentations to always remember. We're also going to provide a realistic practice environment. When we say realistic, Matthew, how realistic is the practice environment? Very realistic, yes. Everyone today will be working in your groups, and you will be practicing some presentations with your groups. And we'll try to have some people actually stand up and give us a little bit of exposure to their presentation. So it will be a very realistic environment today. Don't worry, we're all afraid of public speaking, so it'll be good. We're also going to try to increase your interest in presentations. This is one of the reasons why I changed. I didn't used to like speaking in front of groups of people. Over time, I started becoming more and more interested. I started to see the value of a presentation, the value of standing in front of a room of people. As I started seeing that value, my interest started changing. The more my interest changed, the more I wanted to stand in front of a room of people, the more I wanted to help people and to speak in front of people. So we're going to hopefully increase your interest in presentations. We're also going to show you some of the key areas to focus on with the presentations. Many people don't know where to start. They don't know how to do a presentation. Presentations have some very simple areas to focus on that help you develop the rest of the presentation. And finally, we're going to introduce and practice some of our introduction techniques. So, as I mentioned, we are doing a series on presentations, and today's presentation is the first part on introductions. So, we will be doing questions at the end. If you have any questions, please try to hold them to the end, and hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation. I'm going to enjoy giving. But first of all, let's look at basics. Now I have some very important basics here, and I have 2 seemingly unrelated people. Who is this top person? Yeah, Steve Jobs. Who is this bottom person? Ichiro, yeah. So we have Steve Jobs and we have Ichiro. They're in very, very different professions. Steve Jobs was a very, very famous public speaker. Ichiro is a very famous baseball player. And we'll look at how these two are similar. Some of the basics on presentations. First of all, presentations are opportunities. When you're giving a presentation, it is an opportunity. In front of me right now, I have a room of people. It's an opportunity for me to teach something I think is right, something I've learned, my experience. It's an opportunity for me to teach that. It's an opportunity for me to answer questions people have. It's an opportunity to create an environment where people can work together and practice presentation skills. Presentations are always opportunities. Even if you are afraid of standing in front of a room of people, it is still an opportunity. So that's where many times when people don't want to stand in front of the room, they're losing an opportunity. We want to make sure that people here are able to really capture those opportunities. The second one here is presentations are always expensive. Why are presentations expensive? Many people would say presentations are free. I just stand up, I make some slides, and I present. It's free. Maybe. But everyone in this room, you all work. You all have jobs. Right now, you're here. Instead of working, you have come to this room for this seminar. I think you or your companies could be using you in a different way. So to put people in a room like this, it's expensive. It's my time, it's your time, it's other people's time here. You get a room. Presentations are always expensive. Even at work, in a meeting, when you give a presentation at a meeting, you are stopping people from doing other jobs. Now they're looking at you in your presentation. It's expensive. So presentations are always expensive. Presentations are first impressions. Now, first impressions are very, very important. When you make a first impression on someone, they remember that. When you make a first impression on someone, here's an interesting statistic. When you make a first impression, people look at two things first. The first thing they look at is your eyes. The second thing people look at is what? Your shoes. Yes. People will, if they shake hands, they'll look at your eyes. And when they back up a step, they go right down to your shoes. And so when you're looking at first impressions, many times you'll see people with a very nice looking suit, nice tie, and dirty shoes, tennis shoes. So first impressions are very important. In a presentation, for many people, they don't know anything about you or your company. So your first impression is the presentation. It gives confidence in your company, it gives confidence in your business, it gives confidence in you. So having a good presentation is a very good first impression. Additionally, presentations are planned. And this is really important. Presentations are planned. When you are putting together a presentation, I don't carry around a screen. I don't carry around the projector. I don't carry this equipment with me and suddenly, by the way, I have a presentation. You have to plan it. And a presentation, a well-planned presentation, it looks very positive on the presenter. So presentations are always planned. They're never accidental. A speech sometimes is an accidental. A speech can happen. But a presentation has a story, it has content, it has a beginning, it has an end. A presentation is planned. And finally, the last one here, practice. Presentations are very, very practiced. Now, we look at the two people from earlier, Steve Jobs and Ichiro. Which one of these do you think is the main reason why I put these two pictures up here? What would you guess? Opportunities, expensive, first impressions, planned, or practice? Which one do you think really links these two people? Practice, absolutely. These two are famous for practice. Steve Jobs used to prepare for days before his presentations. It was so smooth. He's a natural presenter, but to be that smooth takes a lot of practice. He practiced and practiced and practiced until he had the whole presentation memorized. Ichiro is an amazing person for practicing. he would swing that bat all day long. If he was on the field, if he was at home, Ichiro was a very, very well-known practicer. And for Ichiro, he's one of my favorite baseball players. That's why I put him up there. There was a coach in the United States, and Ichiro was having kind of a bad year. And they were asking, what are you going to do with Ichiro? And the coach said, there are two things we know. The sun will always rise, and Ichiro will get hits. And Ichiro did. He came out of the slump, was able to have a very good year. So it's the practices, that real commitment to practicing. So with presentations, we have to understand that they're planned, they're expensive, they are definitely opportunities. There's a lot of value you can give people. The chance to have one room of people and for one speaker to have everyone listening. It's a very, very powerful opportunity. So we want to make sure that we remember that they are really big opportunities. These are some of the basics. Next, we're going to look here at the word I mentioned earlier, anatomy. Now, this word is an interesting word. Does anybody know anatomy? I'm guessing there's probably not many people here who know the word anatomy. No? Matthew, can you help me out? What does the word anatomy mean?
Parts of the body.
Yes. Anatomy is a part of the body. Bodies have parts. I have 2 arms. I think most people have 2 arms. 10 fingers. I have 2 legs. I have ears. I have an eye. I have 2 eyes. So your anatomy, these are your parts of the body. We have hands. What can we do with our hands? What do hands let us do? Pick things up, make things, push record on a camera. Our hands allow us to do certain things. So anatomy are the parts of the body that let us do things. Your ears let you hear things. Your eyes let you see things. Your hands let you pick things up, carry things. Your legs let you run. Some animals, and Matthew in the introduction today had an exercise with animals. Some animals have very fast legs. Some animals have wings. So different animals have different body parts. This is their anatomy. Their anatomy lets them do certain things. I want to show you some animals here. This first one, what is this? It's an owl. Yes, this is an owl. Owls are quite famous for a few things. What are some of the strong things an owl can do? Yes, they catch. Why? How do they catch? What do they have?
Mouse or
Yes, they catch mice. What body part lets them catch mice? What are those? Claws. Yes, an owl has claws. If an owl does not have its claws, what happens? It's very hungry. Very fast. So owls have claws. Owls also have wings, so they can fly. Owls fly very high. You mentioned they catch mice. If you're very high and you're catching a mouse, what body part do you need to do that? Yes. Owls have amazing eyes. If you're a blind owl and you have claws, you're still not going to catch the mice. So these are owls. Second animal here. Which animal is this? It's a fox. Does Japan have foxes? They have foxes. Foxes are famous for a few things. What are foxes quite famous for? We have a phrase in English, clever as a fox. Clever as a fox. Foxes are well known for their brains. They're very smart, but they're kind of smart in a bad way. Foxes are able to see opportunities, they take opportunities, and sometimes it works, sometimes they get themselves in a lot of trouble. So a fox has a very good brain. Foxes can also jump quite well. Their powerful legs let them jump. This is part of a fox's anatomy. This animal here, what's this one? Dolphin. How many people here were dolphins? One dolphin. So Dolphins can jump very, very high. They have very powerful tails. If you remove a dolphin's tail, it no longer jumps. They have their fins, they have their sense of smell, their communication abilities. Dolphins have very specific pieces of their anatomy that let them do very special things. And finally, this animal. What is this animal?
Beaver.
It's a beaver, yes. Matthew also asked people if anyone here was a beaver. Beavers are very famous for doing what?
Making a nest?
Yes, they build. They're called a dam. Beavers will spend day after day after day. They collect sticks, they chew on sticks, they make a big pile of sticks, and they can actually block rivers. Beavers just keep going and blocking rivers. They got really big teeth. They have these little paddle-like tails. Beavers are very specially created to build a dam. So presentations also have anatomy. They have things like an introduction, content, questions and answers. You have a flow. If a presentation loses pieces of its anatomy, it's like an owl with no claws. You're not going to catch mice. Or a fox that doesn't have a very good brain. It's not going to, well, they probably won't get into trouble then. Be good for you maybe. There's another reason why I put these animals up here. Does anybody here know much about personality tests? Personality. Personality tests, you ask a lot of questions, people give answers, and you can group people into categories on their personality. These are the 4 animals that are most commonly used with people. And these are the percentages of people who fall into these categories. The owl is 5 to 10% of the people. It's the rarest of the personality types. Owls are known for strategy, people who see how things fit together from a high level, just like how owls can see high, and then when they see an opportunity, they can go down like an owl catching a mouse. 5 to 10% of the people in general populations are considered owls. 30 to 35% of people are foxes. A lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs are fox categories. Foxes see an opportunity and they take it very quickly. Sometimes they go too fast and they get in trouble. But foxes, if they see an opportunity, if you present an opportunity in a room of people, the foxes try to take it. Dolphins. What do you think dolphins are famous for? Absolutely, yes. Dolphins are the people who make communities. They make people happy. If you think at your work or your friends, everybody knows someone who's always really positive. They're always laughing, smiling. If they're in a room of people, they want everyone to be happy. Those are dolphins. Dolphins are very important. They're 15 to 20% of the population. And the biggest are beavers. What do beavers do? They build. You know, people who they keep building structure, building structures, building structures. It's not only construction. It's processes. In your companies, at your work, there are people who are always thinking, okay, we're building this, planning a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, making a foundation. These are the beavers. When you give a presentation in a room of people, I think in this room, 5 to 10% of you are probably owls. 30 to 35% of you are probably foxes. I know we have one dolphin. 40 to 45% of us are going to be beavers. So when you give that presentation, you have to remember there are parts of the presentation and pieces for each of these categories. That's a very important part for the anatomy. So when we talk about presentation anatomy, we're talking about some very important body parts for the presentation that let it be successful. First of all, know what you're talking about. I have been to presentations before, and the presenter has no idea what he's talking about or what she's talking about. It's embarrassing for me, for her, for him, to go to a presentation and the person talking doesn't know anything about the topic. If you have been in a situation like that, you are wasting somebody's time. We don't want to waste time. Presentations are expensive. They're opportunities. Don't lose an opportunity. Don't waste money. know what you're talking about. Maybe the most important. If you don't know, research. I have given presentations before where I've been asked to do something. I don't know that much about the topic. What I do know is I can research. I can ask people. I can find out. I dig and I put together a presentation, so I look and do know enough to confidently give a presentation. PAL. Very simple 3-letter word, PAL. In English, what is a PAL? PAL is friend, yes. PAL is a friend. It's a very casual way of saying friend, PAL. Here in presentations, PAL stands for 3 things. Purpose. Every presentation has a purpose, objective. We looked at our objectives. Every presentation has a purpose. Audience. You have to know who is going to be at the presentation, who will be in the room, because different groups of people will require you to speak a different way. We saw the different animals. If you're giving a presentation to engineers, probably there are a lot of beavers. Engineers are also building.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you give that presentation, you have to remember, I'm talking to probably beavers. If you're giving a presentation to a group of entrepreneurs and CEOs, probably you're talking to a group of foxes. So knowing what the personality types are of the group lets you really adjust and make a good presentation structure. The last one here is logistics. Now logistics can be transportation. Also in the case of a presentation, logistics will be the room, the environment, the lighting, the screen, if you have a camera, anything you're doing, that's the logistical part of a presentation is very, very important to plan before. Many times people will come to a presentation and they pull out their HDMI cable. I say, where's the HDMI? I say, we don't have HDMI here. VGA. And the person has nothing now. So the logistics is making sure in advance you check what are the materials, what's the room like, what's the lighting like. The next part here is body language. Body language is incredibly important for communication. And to be honest, probably more important than the words is the body language. They've done studies where they say up to 90% of the message is non-verbal. It's not the words. Up to 90% is the way you stand, it's the way you present yourself, it's the pictures you use, it's the eye contact. Body language is up to 90% of the message. If you remove the person and you have just a tape recorder playing, you're still listening for things. Intonation going up and down, strong points. So the body language and the way you present is very, very important. Stage movement. Stage movement is, for me, before, I'm standing, this is my area. I'm not going anywhere. I know where I have to stand. And if I'm going to move with a purpose this way, or I'm going to move with a purpose this way. I'm going to identify the places I'm moving to keep people's attention. So stage movement is very important. If you move off camera, in our case here, if I have a camera, if you move off camera, then you just cut out a very important part of the presentation. If you move outside of people's view without thinking, you just ruined a part of the presentation. So stage movement is extremely important. If you move with a purpose. Move for a reason. Eye contact. The eye contact is really important. Does anybody here have a driver's license? Yeah? Maybe many people? When you were doing your driver's training, did they talk to you about your eyes, how often you should change the object you're looking at? It's something like every 3 seconds or every 5 seconds. You're supposed to look slightly at a different place. When you're driving on a highway, it keeps you awake. When you're giving a presentation, it keeps the other people awake. So you always want to catch people's eyes, quickly move on, and eye contact becomes really important for keeping the audience engaged. You also can, if you see one part of the room maybe is not hearing you, you can kind of watch them a bit more and you see them listening up a bit more. The content. Your content is extremely important. 30% of your presentation planning should be on content. Planning the content. before doing a presentation. 30% is going to be on coming up with the idea, what you want to talk about. 30% is going to be making your slides, and 30% is going to be practicing. This 10% is going to kind of fill around on the outsides. But 30% of your time should be spent planning the content. The content doesn't just appear, you have to plan it and make it. And finally, the flow. The most basic of flow here is these four. Your introduction, and today's presentation is on introductions, and we'll talk a little bit about this. You've already heard 3 or 4 different types of introductions, which we're going to review very soon. Your content. You go from your introduction, you introduce your content. After your content here, you have a closing, kind of wrapping things up, and then you open up for questions. So these are the basic types of flow for a presentation. Uh-oh. I got a problem. What's my problem? Nothing. Yes. If I go and give a presentation, we mentioned logistics earlier. If I'm giving a presentation, and I have a VGA cord, and they have an HDMI cord, this happens. So this is a problem. But if you notice something going on right now, I'm still presenting. I'm still talking. I'm still going through with my presentation. But I have nothing on the screen. The important part here is to know what you're talking about, to know the material and to practice. If you know the material, if you've practiced, when a problem like this happens, you have a technology problem, somebody steals your bag, I don't know, something happens. If you go to another country and the power cords don't match, you could have this problem. You can't go home. If you go to the United States to give a presentation for your company, and this happens, and you go home, are you going to tell your boss, sorry, I forgot my slides? You still give a presentation. The way you do that is you know the material, you rehearse, you practice it. It doesn't matter what's on the slides. The slides are for the audience to look at and to have references for, not necessary for the presenter. This is one of the most important things that I've seen in Japan, are people become too dependent on the slides. They read the slides. In this case here, I have nothing on the slide. These are our sand traps. We're coming now a little bit towards the end here. Sand traps. We mentioned in golf. We go golfing, you land in the sand. And when you're stuck in the sand, it's very hard to get out. Now, sand traps and presentations are things that people naturally do. Presentations are not natural. You have to practice them. You have to plan them. You have to think about them. You have to watch other people do them. You have to study about them. Presentations are not things people can naturally do and just have a well-planned presentation or well-planned flow. You have to really understand what you're doing and practice it. Opening slides with questions. This is my personal one that I really don't like. People will put at the top of the slide, why should you join us? Or why should you buy our product? And a question mark. And I'm in the audience thinking, what? Don't you know? This is where I start thinking about the opportunity. Question marks, you don't open with question marks. Instead of saying, why buy our product, you change it to reasons to buy our product. And don't ask the question, because the people in the audience are not going to answer that question. You can ask a question after, but the title of the slide, it looks like it's not confident. Like, you don't know. So opening a slide with a question is one of the ones that is a bit of a sand trap. The next one here is a wall of text. What is text? Sentences, yes. Words, letters, sentences. That's text. A wall of text is a slide that is all writing. Has anybody here seen a slide that is all writing? Everyone in this room? Yeah. I've made slides that are all writing. I've made the mistake. We've all made that mistake probably. A wall of text, you should never have a slide that's a wall of text. Print that document, give it to somebody to read. Don't read it to them. which is one of the other ones here. So wall of text, you should have bullet points, and if you can get rid of bullet points, that's even better. But bullet points takes entire sentences or paragraphs and shortens it. Then you can speak about it because you know the material. And if you have additional information, you give a handout. Random font size. So my font on my slides is 2 different sizes. One size for the heading, one size for the size of the text, nothing else too. Sometimes you'll see a presentation with 3 or 4 different sizes of text on one slide. It's confusing. So random text sizes is very hard for the listener and the audience to follow. Hiding behind notes. I don't have any notes. I have nothing to hide behind. Many times you'll see people when they give a presentation with their notes, they put them in front of their face. Once again, people have a fear of public speaking. If you hide behind the notes, yeah, it muffles what you're saying. When you hide behind those notes, people can't see. Also, the non-verbal communication, your body language. What does that communicate if you're hiding behind notes? It shows this person does not want to be here. They're afraid. They don't know the material. That's what it looks like. Even if you know, it looks like you don't. So hiding behind notes is a very difficult thing for people to overcome. Memorizing paragraphs. We are all guilty of memorizing paragraphs. I know people have always tried to remember word for word, especially in English. They try to memorize a whole paragraph of what you want to say. That never works. When you try to memorize the paragraph in your head, you can only repeat what's in your head. If someone asks a question in the middle, you're in trouble because it stops your thinking. And you go, where was I? And that memorization is, you're never going to be able to get back to where you started. So memorizing is really difficult. You present, you have a flow, you know the material, but you don't just memorize all the words in a sentence because the room might change. You might notice this group of people is not interested in my memorized presentation, or memorized paragraph, and you need to adjust it. Reading the slides. I use my slides to kind of mark notes, where I am. I don't read. Sometimes I've actually seen this more than once. People turning and reading. And I wonder, why is that person here? If somebody turns their back to me and reads the slides, it's just move them over to the side and let me read for myself. So reading the slides, we don't need someone to read an audio script for us. We need someone to present, to answer questions, to build confidence, to seize an opportunity. Big one that students I've seen in Japan quite a bit are guilty of, using new words in a presentation. If you're making a presentation, has anyone here made a presentation in English before? A few people. Have any of you used a dictionary when you were making that presentation? You probably used the word wrong when you said it. I always can tell when someone used a dictionary. If you're making a presentation, stick to the words you know. You can take a very complex message and use simple words and explain a very complex message. If you're looking for words in a dictionary, for that presentation, you're probably going to use the words wrong. And the listener is going to say, gee, it's a dictionary? It looks like that, and people notice it. And finally, the last one is flipping through slides. How often have I been changing the slides? Have I just been pushing this button again and again and again? No. I don't need many slides. One slide, 3 minutes, 4 minutes per slide, no problem. Because you know the content, you know the materials. If there's additional information, give handouts. So with flipping through slides, a lot of times you'll see people with a 30-minute presentation and 50 slides. If you have 50 slides in a 30-minute presentation, that's every 35 seconds, changing. Walls of text coming up, and different font sizes, and you don't know what's happening. The listener gets confused. Flipping through slides is another one of the major sand traps, and it shows a lack of preparation. So these are some of our key contents here. Now, today's presentation is about introductions. I want to look at some of the introductions we have here. Telling a story. I'd like to tell you a story. Did I tell you any stories today? Mark Twain was one. Was I always happy standing in front of a room of people? No. I used to not like standing in front of a room of people. That was a personal story. Explaining that personal thing is telling a story. I'd like to tell you about my situation 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. These are stories. Sometimes the audience doesn't know you're telling a story. You don't always say, I'm going to tell you a story. Sometimes stories are very gently introduced into the presentation. We started off with 2 stories. One on Mark Twain, one on my own personal experiences not liking presentations. Using an analogy. This is a tough one. What is an analogy? Those are analogies. We use a very powerful analogy. We use 4 animals.
Owl.
Owl.
Dolphin and fox.
Beaver, yes. Those 4 animals, we're talking about presentations. Owls don't make presentations. Beavers don't make presentations. Dolphins maybe could make a presentation. They're pretty smart. Foxes don't make presentations. Those animals don't make presentations, so why did I bring them into a presentation? I was talking about anatomy, the things that these animals need to survive. Then we talk about presentations and presentations anatomy, and the things a presentation needs to be successful and to survive. That's an analogy. It's using a different, sometimes it looks like it's not related concept that can help people make a connection. These are analogies. Statistics. Do we use any statistics today? What is the biggest fear people have? Number 1 fear. Yes, there's a powerful statistic. The biggest fear people have is speaking in front of a room of people. We use that statistic already. What percentage of people are owls? What percentage of people are dolphins? What percentage of people are beavers or foxes? Those are statistics. You introduce an analogy and you connect it to a statistic. It helps people to really remember. Imagination. Did we use any imagination today? Sand traps is an analogy. Lots of analogies floating around here. Imagine what happened. Yes. Using the power of imagination in a room. It's a little bit more difficult when you're dealing in a second language. But if you're giving the presentation in English to an English speaker, and you say, imagine, people in their head are creating pictures. Pictures we remember better than words. We remember stories. 2 or 3 times more we remember a story than words. So when we use imagine this, we're telling people, use your brain. Put a picture in there, create your picture. And then when you leave that presentation, you remember that picture. So imagination, getting people to imagine. Steve Jobs did that really, really well. He would always get people to imagine this future with these connected devices. And it was very, very powerful. Finally, leading with a quote. Did we lead with a quote today?
Sentence from Mark Twain.
Yes. Does anybody remember that quote? The death of fear is certain. Yes. When I was a child, my family, for summer break from school, we were going on vacations or choosing a vacation. And all the kids want to go to Disneyland or go to really fun places, the beach. I begged my parents to take me to a place called Hannibal, Missouri. Hannibal, Missouri is not a big town. Hannibal, Missouri is not famous. Not many people know about it. There's no beaches. There are no attractions, no theme parks. Hannibal, Missouri was the birthplace of Mark Twain. And I asked my parents to take me to that place. And so it was very boring for my other brothers. But I got my wish. And 2 or 3 vacations later, I was allowed to pick the next place to go. So I chose Hannibal, Missouri instead of Disneyland. My brothers still haven't forgiven me. So with this, I want to take a look here, and this is the main content part of the presentation. I'd like to take a look here at some useful language. So when you're giving a presentation, it's important to have some key words, key phrases that you can fall back on to use in your presentations. And you don't have to memorize them, but you just learn them, and they become very flexible. So I'd like you to please repeat after me with some of these here. The first one is for opening a presentation. Please repeat. Can you say, if I could have everybody's attention? Good. If the room is noisy. Sometimes a presentation like this, Japan is actually usually Japanese are really good. We'll sit down and wait. In America, they're wandering around, they're getting coffee. So you're trying to kind of shepherd them into an area. So you say, if I could have everybody's attention. And the next one here, please repeat. If we can start.
If we can start.
Good. So this is where it's maybe a little bit more informal. And we're saying, if we can start, we're ready to go. Maybe it's a routine, kind of a routine presentation. The next one here is very important. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for coming today.
Yes, always thank the audience. It's their time, it's expensive, it's the opportunity. We're thanking them for coming. And the next one here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is.
What is my name? Now you all know me. Good. This is for part of the opening. Now also when we're talking about introductions, we mentioned some of the key introductions that we use in presentations. The first one here, please repeat after me. Can you say, I have an interesting statistic here.
I have an interesting statistic here.
Good. I used this earlier. I have an interesting statistic here. The most common fear people have is public speaking, standing in front of a room of people. That's an interesting statistic. The next one here, Steve Jobs is great at this. Try to imagine.
Try to imagine.
Yes. This one, if you do it in your native language with other native speakers, it's pretty good. It's easy. If you do it in English with English speakers, it's pretty easy. If you try to get non-native speakers to imagine in English, it's a little bit more difficult. Because people are trying to, in their head, translate things around. But if you are giving a presentation in English to English speakers and you use try to imagine, it will work. And the final one here, I want to tell you a story.
I want to tell you a story.
Yes, I want to tell you a story. Very, very important for relating to people on a personal level. Telling people a story. And with that, we are going to be starting some of our group activities for the day.
So thank you very much, David. Let's give him a round of applause. There will be more time for questions later, so if you have a question, please write it down and we will come to it.